Hey Cal fans, and welcome to this week's football film study here on California Golden Blogs. In this video, I'm going to look at the matchup between Cal and USC that took place on Saturday, and I'm going to look specifically at some of the big passing plays that resulted from breakdowns in the Bears' secondary. We're going to see that the scheme there was a little bit more interesting than just a couple of guys getting beat one-on-one. This video is going to focus on USC, but if you want to hear more about the big game, I'm doing a live cast tonight at 7 on my Patreon site, where I also have write-ups of 3 Stanford games from this season, as well as a report on last year's big game, so you can check all that out there. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's get into the scheme. A key matchup in the USC-Cal game was the Trojans wide receivers against the Bears secondary. USC obviously won that matchup in spades, but in this video, I want to show that this wasn't just about defenders losing their one-on-one matchups. There was also an interesting scheme and coaching component here, and so this matchup was about a lot more than raw physical talent. We can see that starting with this play. This came on USC's first drive after halftime, and this big play really started to open things up for the Trojans, who only led by 7 at the half. On this play, USC is running a compressed formation, with all 4 of their receiving threats in tight to the offensive line. Whenever an offense brings their receivers in tight like this, you have to be expecting routes that break to the outside, because that's where all the space is. In fact, we can see that on this play, where all 4 of the Trojans' receivers are breaking to the outside, putting a horizontal stretch on Cal's underneath coverage. Now, when we return to the big play, what do we see? We can't see it in this shot, but Cal's playing with 2 deep safeties, and so both of their cornerbacks are going to play outside of their receivers, trying to keep the ball away from the sidelines and force it inside to those deep safeties. At the top of the screen, the cornerback's playing a classic cover 2 flat technique, getting hands on his wide receiver and ensuring an inside release and funneling him toward the deep safety before dropping outside to cover his flat zone. At the bottom of the screen, we see the cornerback playing off and well to the outside of his receiver, taking away anything that might break outside and deep. Now, when the cornerbacks are playing outside like this, they're vulnerable to inside releases just because of their alignment, and so this scheme hinges on those 2 deep safeties being there to the inside as help players. USC is putting pressure on this system by running this inside receiver on a crossing route and then running the outside receiver down the seam. They're using these 2 routes to put a horizontal stretch on that safety, and as we roll this play forward and stop it right here, we see that the safety to this side of the field has chased the crossing route down into the inside, leaving a bunch of space between himself and the cornerback for the seam route. So that's the big picture schematically. At the individual level, there's also some interesting stuff to talk about here, and we can see it when we look at this camera angle. When we look at Bynum here, it's clear that he's not just running with his receiver man-to-man. He's playing significantly outside of him, and his primary objective is to defend something like a corner route that breaks to the sidelines, because that's where he doesn't have any help. Now, from right here, if the wide receiver were to run straight down the seam, then Bynum would squeeze inside to that route because he wouldn't have any outside threat. It seems counterintuitive, but when you're a wide receiver and you're trying to get separation, the best way to do it is sometimes to run straight toward your defender. In other words, you need to get covered early to get open late. Here we can see the wide receiver giving a nice outside move, and since Bynum's responsible for outside routes, he obviously has to respect this. When St. Brown then cuts straight down the field, it gives him the separation that he needs to catch the ball in that empty seam. The play that we just saw was USC's longest gain of the night. On their very next drive, they did something similar for their second longest game. Before the snap here, we can see that Cal's again playing a split safety look. At the top of the screen, Hicks knows that he has safety help inside, and so as we roll the play forward, we can see him playing outside of his receiver, protecting the sidelines and forcing him inside to his help player. To attack this, USC is again putting a horizontal stretch on that safety, this time by running a double post pattern. As we advance the play, we see that the safety to this side of the field has gotten grabbed by the inside post, which is being run at a shallower depth than the outside post. When he does this, it leaves the cornerback on an island deep, trying to defend an inside breaking route with outside leverage, and doing this against a much bigger receiver. So, with all that said, what kind of look wouldn't be vulnerable to this kind of combination? We can see a good example right here. Before the snap, it looks like Cal's playing another split safety coverage, and we might expect Bynum here to play outside of his receiver, forcing him inside to his safety help. In reality, though, the Bears are spinning this safety down to put him in a single high look. Without that safety there, Bynum's mirroring his receiver instead of playing outside of him. He's not expecting any help, and so he's actually able to get tighter coverage on his receiver than he did with the split safety coverage, and he gets a nice physical pass breakup. The danger here, obviously, is that you're asking your cornerbacks to cover USC's very talented receivers with no safety help down the sidelines. On the other hand, Cal didn't actually give up any routes like this as long as their cornerbacks could stay upright, and so from a schematic and ability standpoint, it might have been better to play more single high than to give up those huge plays with their split safety coverages. Alright, that's it for this video. If you want more, then feel free to check out patreon.com/Burke18 for all my Stanford-related content. Otherwise, I'll see you here next week, and go Bears!